When I first saw her, I thought I was hallucinating. She stood barefoot in my kitchen, dust and blood smeared across her face, holding one of my Altman's old butcher knives like she'd been born with it in her hand. Her eyes were wild, sunken, frantic, desperate. She looked like a ghost that hadn't eaten in weeks. "You make a sound, I gut you," she rasped. I raised my hand slowly. "Ma'am, don't ma'am me. I ain't got time. Sit." She pointed the knife toward one of the kitchen chairs. I sat. I'd only arrived at the ranch that morning. My Uncle Marcus had passed 3 weeks earlier and left me the deed. He didn't have children, no wife, and after 20 years of silence between us, I didn't expect much more than a run-down house, maybe some cattle, and a place to catch my breath after losing my job in Phoenix. What I hadn't expected was this woman in my house, looking like she'd crawled out of the earth. She paced back and forth in front of me, breathing through her teeth, one hand tugging at her tangled brown hair. The knife never dipped, not once. "I need you to do something," she said finally, voice cracking. "Something real important." "All right," I said carefully, "but you're gonna have to start with your name." She stared at me like that question was harder than anything else in the world. Then she said, "Call me Tabitha." I nodded slowly. "Okay, Tabitha. What do you need me to do?" She looked around the kitchen, then leaned forward until the knife was pressed gently against the skin of my throat. "Pretend you're my husband," she whispered. "Pretend like you belong here, and if they come, if they ask, you tell them we'd been married 10 years and that you brought me back here to get away from the war." "Who's coming?" I asked, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. Her lips trembled. "Men. 3 of them. Maybe more. Vice's men. They think I ran off with something that don't belong to them." "Did you?" She didn't answer. I tried to read her. There was something under the surface, something raw and broken. She wasn't just scared. She was resigned, like she'd made peace with dying today. That's what scared me most. "Look," I said quietly, "I'm not gonna hurt you, but if someone's after you and they're coming here, I need to know what I'm up against. You're up against dying, same as me." She turned away and started rummaging through the pantry like she'd lived here for years. I noticed her limp, one leg stiff. She moved like someone used to pain. "Why pretend to be my husband?" I asked. Tabitha spun on me. "Because if they think I'm alone, they'll kill me slow. If they think I got a man, someone who might have helped me, they might hesitate, just long enough. For what? For me to kill them." The room was quiet. I glanced toward the door. The Arizona heat pressed like a hand against the windows, light pouring in through the cracks in the boards. Dust danced in the sunbeams. I could have run. I could have taken the horse I came in on and rode until I found a sheriff or a town or a different kind of trouble. But I didn't. I stayed seated because something in her voice, something in her eyes, told me this wasn't just about stolen items or a misunderstanding. This was survival, and she'd already decided how far she was willing to go. And I, for reasons I couldn't explain then, wanted to understand it.
I didn't sleep that first night. Tabitha, if that was really her name, sat with her back against the front door, knife resting across her lap, eyes trained on the moonlit hills like a soldier on watch. I lay on the floor of the parlor with my boots still on, staring up at the ceiling, listening for the sound of horses or voices. Every creak of the old house felt like footsteps. At dawn, I got up and made coffee. She didn't say a word, just took the tin cup I handed her and sipped with shaking hands. I noticed her eyes scan every window, every shadow. She looked like someone who'd survived too many close calls. I tried to act normal, told her I was Fletcher Knox, and this was my uncle's ranch. She nodded like she already knew. "How long have you been here?" I asked. She didn't answer. That's when I started to wonder. The house had been abandoned for nearly 5 years, ever since Uncle Marcus wrote me that final letter and vanished from everyone's life. I had assumed he'd died quietly, maybe drunk under a cottonwood tree, buried by neighbors. But when the lawyer in Tucson contacted me with a deed and will, I came to claim what little was left. I dug through the dusty strongbox Marcus left behind, mostly receipts, old letters, and a few ledgers with ranch finances. Nothing unusual, until I looked at the deed. The date on it was just 4 months ago. That didn't make sense. Marcus had died nearly 6 months ago, according to the lawyer. So who signed the deed? I flipped it over, and there it was. The signature at the bottom, in bold, rough handwriting, said Marcus J. Knox. I sat back hard in the chair. My uncle had been dead when this was signed. Or he hadn't, and someone was lying to me. I showed the paper to Tabitha. She barely glanced at it. She said, "I know." "You know?" She said, "I've been waiting for you." Those words hit like a hammer. How the hell do you know who I am? She took a deep breath, eyes flicking to the door again. "Because Marcus told me about you. Said you were stubborn but decent. Said if anyone could finish what he started, it'd be you." "What did he start?" Before she could answer, a gust of wind rattled the shutters. Tabitha stood fast and crossed the room. Her whole body went still, listening. Then she whispered, "They're here." I followed her to the back of the house, heart hammering. From the ridge, we could see dust rising. Riders, 3, maybe 4, cutting through the brush with purpose. Tabitha grabbed my wrist. "We can't stay here." "Where?" "There's a hidey hole behind the pantry wall. Marcus built it during the war. Hurry." I grabbed my saddlebag, heart racing. "Wait, my horse." "Forget the damn horse," she hissed. We ducked behind the pantry shelves and pressed into a narrow crawl space between 2 walls. I didn't even know it existed. She shut the hidden door behind us, and darkness swallowed everything. I could hear her breathing, shallow, fast, but she wasn't trembling. "We stay quiet," she whispered, "no matter what." Through the slats, we watched as 4 men rode into the yard. They didn't knock. They barged in like they owned the place. The leader was thin and sharp-looking, like a man carved out of gristle and sin. His black duster swayed as he moved through the house, boots thudding across floorboards like war drums. "Fletcher Knox," he said aloud, smirking as he picked up my saddlebag. So the boy finally showed. He pulled out my journal, flipped it open, then tossed it aside. "Fan out," that told the others. "He's here." Tabitha squeezed my arm. That's when I realized she hadn't just been squatting in my uncle's house. She'd been waiting. For me. For this moment. And now I was in it. Whatever it was. Up to my damn neck.
The space behind the wall was barely wide enough for the 2 of us. Tabitha pressed her body against mine, breathing through her nose to stay quiet. I could feel the tension in her limbs, every muscle tight, ready to spring. The air in there was warm, stale, and filled with dust. I could hear the men's boots above us, pacing, thudding, dragging. The leader, Vice, she'd called him, moved like he already knew the house by heart. He stomped through each room, opening drawers, tearing down curtains. The man had no respect for the dead or the living.
"Someone's been here," one of the men called out. "There's fresh coffee, still warm." My stomach sank. Vice laughed, low and cruel. "Of course he's here. Can't inherit a place without sniffing around first. Want me to check upstairs? Do it. Tear the place apart." We waited in silence. My legs were starting to cramp, but I didn't dare move. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of my face and into my collar. Tabitha leaned in, her lips brushing my ear. She mouthed, "I left something upstairs. If they find it." She cracked. "What is it?" "Letters." I couldn't ask more. Footsteps creaked overhead. "I got something. Found it under a floorboard." Vice came running. We couldn't see him from our position, but we could hear everything. The sound of paper shuffling. Silence. Then Vice's voice again, this time colder. "Catherine Cross," he said, slowly. "Ain't that something?" I turned to Tabitha, stunned. "You're Catherine?" I whispered. She nodded once, eyes locked on the wall in front of her. Vice kept reading aloud. "To Marcus Knox, my only ally left. They're shipping rifles through Santa Rita Pass next month. If I disappear, assume the worst. Burn everything." He paused. "P.S. Tell Fletcher the truth." My heart stopped. Tabitha's jaw clenched. She looked ready to punch through the wall and kill him herself. Vice chuckled. "She's still alive. I can feel it, which means she'll come for these." "She already did," one of the others said. "That saddlebag. Someone's here now." A long silence followed. Then the unmistakable sound of a match being struck. My blood ran cold. "Burn the house," Vice said. Tabitha went rigid. "No," she whispered. "Wait," another man said. "If we burn the letters, we lose the leverage." Silence again. Vice sighed. "All right, no fire. Not yet. We'll leave 2 men here. If he shows, kill him slow." I could finally breathe. The men exited the house, boots echoing. 2 stayed behind. One sat in the kitchen, the other paced the hall like a guard dog. Hours passed. Tabitha barely moved. Her hand stayed on the tiny Derringer pistol, white-knuckled. My legs went numb. My thoughts swirled. Catherine Cross. Letters. My uncle's death. Smuggling. Lies. Nothing made sense yet, but I knew one thing. Tabitha, or Catherine, whoever she really was, wasn't just some drifter. She was central to something bigger, and I was caught right in the middle of it.
We waited until the moon was high. The house had gone quiet. The man pacing the hallway had finally stopped, probably fallen asleep against the wall. The one in the kitchen was humming an old tune off-key, something about whiskey and war. The sound made my skin crawl. Tabitha leaned close. "We go now." "How?" I whispered. She didn't answer, just pressed her shoulder against the false wall. A soft click. The panel gave way. She moved like she'd done it a dozen times before, slipping through the gap, barefoot and silent. I followed, careful not to kick anything. The parlor was dark and cold, shadows stretching long across the floor. A draft blew through the broken window panes, making the curtains sway like ghosts. We crept upstairs. Every step creaked. I held my breath with each one. At the top, Tabitha slipped into Marcus's old bedroom. She dropped to the floor beside the scorched floorboard the man had torn up earlier. The letters were gone. Her mouth tightened into a hard line. "They have 'em," she whispered. "Those letters, that was proof of everything." I didn't fully understand what everything meant yet, but the panic in her voice told me it was bad. "They're not burning the house anymore," I said. "That buys us time." She shook her head. "No, it means they want it. Set a trap. He knows I'll come back for them." His eyes locked with mine. "Which means you're bait now." Before I could respond, the floorboards creaked behind us. We froze. A man stood in the hallway, backlit by the dim glow of a lantern. His eyes went wide when he saw us. Tabitha didn't hesitate. She kicked the lantern straight into his chest, sending flames and hot oil flying. He screamed as fire bloomed across his shirt. I tackled him into the banister. We went crashing through it together and landed hard on the first floor below. My ribs exploded in pain. He groaned once and didn't move again. I rolled off him, gasping. "Move!" Tabitha shouted from above. The other guards stormed into the room from the kitchen, pistol raised. Tabitha fired her derringer. One shot, high and wide. It hit the wall near his head, just enough to make him flinch. That's all I needed. I tackled him too, slamming his head into the floor. The gun slid across the room. He reached for it, but Tabitha was already there. She stomped on his wrist and brought the butt of her pistol down on his head. He went limp. We didn't stick around. Tabitha led me through a trap door in the back pantry that opened onto a narrow crawl space under the house. We emerged behind the barn, the cold night air hitting our sweat-soaked skin like a slap. I could see the other men camped a few hundred yards out, shadows around a low burning fire. "We can't take the horses," she whispered. "Too loud." "What then?" She pointed toward the dark hills. "We run." And we did. Through thorny brush, over broken fences, stumbling through dry creek beds. My lungs burned, my ribs streamed, but Tabitha didn't slow. Even with her limp, she kept pushing forward. Finally, she led us down into a ravine where a trickle of water flowed through the rocks. "We'll lose the trail here," she said, panting. "Dogs can't track through moving water." I collapsed beside her, legs trembling. "Those letters," I asked, "what's in 'em?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, "They prove Marcus was murdered, not by sickness, but by vice, because he got too close." "Too close to what?" She looked up at the stars, eyes hard. "On a weapons pipeline, smuggling, south into Mexico. He found out and tried to stop it. I helped him collect proof. Then vice caught on." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And now?" She turned to me. "Now we finish what he started."
The water felt like ice, but we kept moving downstream, letting the shallow current wash away our scent. Tabitha, Catherine, I kept forgetting, walked ahead of me, wading knee-deep through the rocky creek, her thin frame silhouetted in the early morning light. Neither of us spoke for a while. I had too many questions, too many thoughts clawing at my mind like wild dogs. My uncle wasn't just some cranky old rancher who died in his sleep. He was murdered. And Catherine, this stranger who showed up in my kitchen with a knife, was his lover, his partner. Maybe even the only person who truly knew what he'd been fighting against. We climbed out of the creek and took shelter beneath a cluster of sycamores. Catherine collapsed against a tree, rubbing her leg. Her limp was worse now. I sat down beside her, catching my breath. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Please." She looked at me, and something in her softened. For the first time, she looked less like a hunted animal and more like a woman who'd carried too much grief for too long. Marcus found out about the weapons through a rancher in Tucson. Turns out Vice wasn't just some outlaw. He was a courier. Guns from California, ammunition from Texas, all routed through abandoned ranches like this one, yours now, to cross into Sonora. And Marcus tried to stop it? She nodded. He started collecting letters, manifests, contacts, anything he could. Hid it all in this house. But someone tipped Vice off. One night, Marcus didn't come back from town. 2 days later, I found a burned wagon and a boot full of blood near Black Hollow Creek. So he didn't die of fever. No. Her voice cracked. He died screaming. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. My stomach twisted. I didn't even know him that well, I admitted. He and my dad had a falling out. He sent me letters sometimes, always rambling, kind of paranoid. I stopped reading them. She looked at me then, eyes shining. He wasn't paranoid. He just didn't want to pull you into this unless he had to. Well, I said, here I am. Catherine gave a bitter smile. Yeah, you are. I rubbed my face. Those letters Vice found, are they enough to prove anything? They're not the only ones, she said. He got one stash. There's another set, but they're harder to reach. Where? Inside the old Union telegraph relay east of the pass. We buried 'em there, wrapped in oilcloth. Marcus made me memorize the coordinates. And Vice doesn't know? No, she said, not unless he tortured it out of someone else. I stared at her for a long moment. What happens if we recover him? We take him to Marshal Carson in Denver. He's the only one Marcus trusted. There's a line of corrupt deputies between here and justice. We don't go through the usual channels. I nodded slowly. And if we fail? She didn't blink. Then Vice keeps smuggling rifles across the border until the whole damn territory turns red. I swallowed. It was the first time I realized how much bigger this was than me or even Marcus. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about preventing a war or stopping one already in motion. I'm in, I said, all the way. Catherine raised an eyebrow. You sure? No, I said honestly, but I can't walk away now. She smiled faintly and reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a silver locket, dirt-smeared and dented. This belonged to Marcus, she said, pressing it into my palm. He wore it every day, said it reminded him of why he fought. I opened it. Inside was a tiny picture of my father and me as a boy. I stared at it for a long time. Something shifted in my chest. This wasn't just inheritance anymore. This was legacy.
We traveled light, keeping to the dry washes and rocky gullies, sleeping in shifts and speaking in hushed voices. The world felt smaller when you knew someone wanted you dead. Even the birds seemed quieter, like they knew not to sing too loud. It took us 2 days to reach the ridge above Vice's camp. From there, we could see the full picture. About a dozen men moved through a makeshift outpost at the mouth of a canyon. Tents, crates, and a line of horses tethered near the creek. Smoke drifted up from their fire, and near it, seated like he didn't have a care in the world, was Henrik Weiss himself. He had the letters, a stack of them, tied with string, resting in his lap like a bedtime story. He flipped one open and chuckled to himself. Catherine lay beside me in the scrub, spying through a broken spyglass Marcus had left behind. I watched her face harden. He's not just reading them, he's enjoying it. I looked through the spyglass. Weiss looked like the devil dressed for a Sunday picnic. Black vest, gloves, silver hair tied back neat. The way he sat, legs crossed, savoring every page, it made me want to put a bullet between his eyes. I said, "They're not going to burn them. He wants to learn what Marcus knew." Catherine nodded. "He thinks he can use the names in those letters, threaten people, turn them." "Is that what he did to Marcus?" "No, Marcus didn't break." She turned to me, eyes steady. "I need to tell you something else, something Marcus never wrote down." I waited. "He found out Weiss wasn't acting alone. There's a ring, ex-military men, railroad investors. They're all tied together, funneling weapons and cash into revolutionary groups across the border. They want instability, means more contracts, more control." My jaw clenched. "How do we stop that?" "We start by taking those letters back, but we can't just charge in." We watched as Weiss stood and handed the letters to a younger man, tall, dark hair, a scar on his jaw. He tucked them into a saddlebag and tied it shut. "That's Ash Levin, Weiss's second. He's worse, no conscience." "What's the play?" I asked. "We split up. You get close to the fire. I'll draw them toward the north bluff. Noise, a few gunshots. Once the camp's distracted, grab the saddlebag and ride east. I'll meet you at the gulch." "That's suicide." She gave a dry smile. "It is if you screw it up." I didn't laugh. The next few hours passed in silence, except for the sound of sharpening knives and the occasional cough from the men below. I kept replaying Marcus's face in that locket, what he must have gone through to get those letters, what it cost him. Catherine handed me a rusted Colt with only 4 bullets. She said, "Don't miss." I strapped the saddlebag tied across my back and double-checked the cinch on my horse. I asked her, "Are you sure you're up for this?" She looked at me, dirt-smudged and bleeding from a cut above her eye, and gave a single nod. "I've been waiting 2 years to finish this." I held her gaze a second longer, then we parted. She headed north, disappearing into the trees. I waited for her signal, 3 quick gunshots. When they rang out, the whole camp exploded into motion, and I ran straight into the fire.
The camp was in chaos. Men scrambled for rifles. Horses reared and kicked against their tethers. Someone shouted, "We're under fire!" while another screamed, "It's a bluff! Circle the ridge!" I ducked behind a stack of crates, heart pounding, breath shallow. My fingers were slick with sweat as I spotted the tall one, Ash Levin, fumbling with his saddlebag, the letters still tucked inside. He hadn't saddled up yet. He was just standing there, pistol drawn, barking orders. I could have waited for a better moment. I could have been smart. But my blood was up, and Marcus's ghost was screaming in my ears. So I ran straight at him. I tackled Ash at full speed, sending us both sprawling into the dirt. The saddlebag tore loose, and I rolled, grabbing it with one hand and pulling my Colt with the other. He was faster.
His boot caught me in the ribs, and I hit the ground hard. My gun skidded across the gravel. Ash came at me, swinging. I blocked his first punch, but the second cracked across my jaw and stars filled my vision. He grabbed the saddlebag, yanked it toward him, but I held on tight. "You don't even know what's in there," he hissed. "I know it's worth dying for." We wrestled in the dirt, grunting, teeth bared. I got my hand around a rock and smashed it into his temple. He reeled back, stunned, and I lunged for the gun. But then a familiar voice rang out. "Step back, Ash." Vice. He stood 10 paces away, calm as ever, silver hair catching the firelight. His revolver was aimed square at me. "You must be Fletcher," he said, like we were old friends. I didn't move, didn't breathe. "Your uncle was a pest, smart but short-sighted. Now well, you're a damn fool, but brave." "I guess you want the letters?" I said. He smiled faintly. "No, I already have copies. This was just insurance. You've already lost." Behind me, Ash groaned and stood. Blood trickled down his face. Vice raised his pistol higher. Then bang! Vice's body jerked backward. A red bloom spread across his chest. He stumbled, looked down at the hole, then back up at me. Catherine stood behind him, rifle barrel smoking. "I told you, you shouldn't have come back." Vice dropped to his knees, then collapsed face first in the dust. Ash lunged for his pistol, but I got there first. I kicked it away and leveled my Colt at his chest. "Don't," I said. He held up his hands, panting. "It's bigger than you think," he said. "Vice was just the edge of it. You don't understand." "I understand enough." Catherine walked over, still aiming. Ash's eyes darted between us. "Kill me, and another will take his place." "We're not killing you. You're gonna talk to a federal marshal." He paled. I tied his hands while Catherine searched Vice's body. Inside his coat, she found another bundle of documents. Maps, coded lists, bribe ledgers. It was everything. The rot laid bare. We looked at each other. We had enough now, not just for revenge, for justice. Catherine tucked the documents into the saddlebag, then looked down at Vice's corpse. "Marcus can rest now." And for the first time since this began, I believed her.
We rode through the night. Ash Levin tied to a spare horse, grumbling threats that we ignored. Catherine led the way with a determination I hadn't seen in anyone since the war. Steady, sharp, and unbreakable. She didn't look back, not even once. By dawn, we reached Candelaria Station and sent a wire to Denver, coded, urgent. Marshal Elijah Carson rode in 2 days later, flanked by 4 deputies in clean coats and hard eyes. He didn't shake hands or smile. He just read the letters, flipped through Vice's maps, and looked at me with something close to respect. "You did good, son," he said. "Marcus was a damn pain, but he was right." They took Ash Levin into custody, along with half the town's crooked lawmen. The marshal's men moved quick, like they'd been waiting for this moment too. Within a week, the smuggling operation was gone, burned out. Crates of rifles seized, hidden caches found, names in Vice's ledger turned into indictments. It was like yanking a snake out of a haystack, loud, messy, and long overdue. Catherine and I watched it all from a distance. We stayed quiet, kept to the edges, let the truth do the work. And when it was done, when the war we'd stumbled into finally started to lose steam, we returned to the only place that still felt real, the ranch. We rebuilt it, piece by piece. The front porch first, then the barn, then the main house. Catherine planted sage along the fence line, said it kept away the rattlers. I think it made her feel safer. I fixed up Marcus's old room and made it mine, left his locket on the mantel beside a photo of him and my father from long ago. We didn't talk about the war or vice or the blood we'd spilled. We didn't need to. Catherine slept through the night now, most nights. I started writing letters, long ones, about the land, the sky, the way things grew. I wrote to no one, maybe to Marcus, maybe to myself. It helped. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and the fields turned gold, she sat beside me on the porch with a mug of coffee and said, "You know, I think he would have liked this." "Who?" I asked. "Marcus, watching us build something." I nodded, staring out at the fence I'd just finished. "He'd probably tell us we're idiots for trying." She smiled. "Probably." There were scars, of course. I still flinched at loud noises. Catherine couldn't ride past an abandoned outpost without scanning the ridge for snipers. We kept rifles on the walls and lanterns close to the windows, but the fear faded, and in its place, something else grew. Peace, maybe. One morning, a letter arrived, official-looking, Marshal Carson's seal. It said, "The matter is closed. You are both clear." Catherine read it once, then burned it in the stove. She said, "We already knew that." Life went on. Cows needed tending, fences needed mending, and the world, for all its cruelty, kept turning. One night, as I watched her sleep beside me, hair fanned out across the pillow, scar just visible beneath her jaw, I felt something strange. Hope. Not for what was lost, but for what we could still build. The dead were buried, the lies were burned, the guns were gone, and all that remained was us.